Hello, everyone. My name is Luke Wilcox. I'm from East Kentwood High School in Kentwood, Michigan, which I like to brag about my school. We are the #1 most diverse public school in the state of Michigan, with students from over 70 different countries represented in our hallways. So it is truly an incredible place to work. Now, many of you know that my colleague Lindsay Gallus and myself started a website called StatsMedic several years ago, where we share AP Stats lessons for free. Now, we decided that it was time for those lessons to get a refresh this year. So we have updated all of the lessons for AP Stats, and I got a chance to try every single one of them in my classroom this year, make some polishes and edits on it, and these will be ready to release to the internet on August 1st. Now, let's talk about the reasons why we decided to do this refresh. First up is the idea that we wanted them to look fresh. For me, I'm kind of old school. Times New Roman or Arial is just fine. Lindsay says that is unacceptable. So all of the new lessons have been updated to an Avenir font, which is the font that you'll see on all of the MathMedic lessons. Up next is this idea of increased efficiency. Now, at East Kentwood High School, I have about 55-minute class periods. We know that many teachers have less time than that, and we wanted to make sure that every one of these lessons could be done in one class period. So there has been a lot of thinking in the design of these lessons to make sure that they are efficient. Up next is that we wanted to make sure that there was perfect alignment to the College Board course and exam description, the CED. And so we actually went through line by line in the CED, topic by topic, to make sure that every single topic that is in the CED is covered in the StatsMedic curriculum. So if you are all in with StatsMedic, you can be 100% confident that you are covering anything that might show up on the AP exam. Now, many of you know that this CED is going to be updated 2 years from now. There has been a proposed revised course framework. No, don't worry about that. I have already put in a proposal for another best practices presentation that I will be doing 2 years from now, where I'll present the StatsMedic refreshed lessons. Up next, we wanted to make sure that we had student-friendly learning targets. So the learning targets are not just for the teacher to know what needs to be covered in that lesson, but we also want the students to be able to know what should be covered in that particular lesson. Up next is new answer keys. So some of you may know this already, but every StatsMedic answer key has two colors, blue and red. And the idea is that the blue is student responses that we might expect as they work through the activity together in small groups. So this is the experience first part of the lesson. Well, after the students get their answers up on the board, the teacher then leads the class through a whole class debrief of the activity. And that's what you see in red. The red is the teacher notes that the teacher is going to add on when they're debriefing the lesson there. So every single one of the new lessons has a brand new answer key with a lot more of these teacher notes that you'll see in red. Now let's talk about the real reason why we refreshed the lessons here. So I'm going to take you back to last summer. This is my daughter, Reese. She is 14 years old in this picture, and she is definitely a crazy Swiftie fan. And she convinced me to take her and 4 of her friends to the Taylor Swift concert in Chicago last summer. And let me tell you, it was amazing. It was about halfway through the show when I realized that Justin Timberlake had to go and was going to get replaced with Taylor Swift. So the real reason why we did these refresh lessons is that for a lot of the lessons, we wanted to have a new context. So you are going to find that 21 of the AP Stats lessons that are coming out have totally new contexts that are different than the old lessons. Now, where are you going to find these refresh lessons? Well, I'm going to take you through a very short history lesson here. So I'll take you way back 9 years ago when Lindsay and I first started our website. I'm not sure that many of you will remember this one, but it was called The StatsMedic. And the reason it was The StatsMedic was because that was the only URL that was available. Statsmedic.com was not available at the time. So this is how we launched 9 years ago. Now, eventually, the URL statsmedic.com did become available, which we purchased for $75. and then updated our logo to look like this one. Now, the problem we had with this logo was that the trademark lawyers told us that apparently there is some other organization that has a similar logo, this like red plus that you see here, and they thought we might get in some sort of trouble for that. And so we redesigned the logo, and you may have not have noticed this, but the red plus is a skinnier plus. It has different dimensions than the previous one. So this is our current logo, but starting on August 1st, when we release these refresh lessons, you will find these at MathMedic. So we are taking all of the StatsMedic lessons, all of the CalcMedic lessons, all of the MathMedic lessons, and we are putting them into one place, which will be MathMedic. That new website will be launching on August 1st, which is where you can find the StatsMedic refresh lessons. So I certainly hope you get a chance to try some of these lessons. I can tell you that based on using them in my classroom this year, they went really, really well. My students had a great year, and I hope that your students will also enjoy these new lessons.
Good evening. My name is Erin Sillette, and I'm a teacher at Greenbrier High School in Evans, Georgia. Go Pack! I am showing you a lab that I do with my students called Are You Getting Chipped? Let's discuss where this came from. And it started about a debate among my students. They were arguing with one another. They feel cheated whenever they are buying a bag of chips, that it's just a scam. We're being lied to. The debate struggle centers around like the air in the bag. Is it really there to protect the chips, or is it just part of the scam to make you feel like you're getting more than you're really getting? Also, the weight of the bag is a concern because they are signing up to purchase chips and not a bag. When you fill it with air, you get a bigger bag, more weight, and more cheat. So they're highly invested in this activity. So here's how I set up. I do a survey based on the chips that are available to me at my local big box store. I have them do a vote for two Google form. Then I prepare slides, handouts, put together some kitchen scales. You'll need several in order to do this efficiently. And my random selected chips. Yes, I go through a process. Invite other staff and admin to participate if they have planning. This is a real low level, low entry, low bar, a way to collect data. Or way to eat chips is another excuse that you can read that as. I set up the operations of my handouts to follow the structure of phantoms, but you can adjust it to meet however it is you organize the inference in your classroom. So I walk them through the parameter and the hypotheses. I also encourage them to lower their alpha level when we have a discussion of type 1 error. What would it mean if they are wrong and commit a type 1 error? So we encourage them to really take the chip companies to task and put their probability on the line. What chips do we work with? Well, it's based on our survey. And here's where I sacrifice everything for the name of statistics, because there are 37 boxes in this particular circumstance of Doritos that were selected. So you will see me reorganizing all of the boxes of chips in this store and numbering them, assigning them a number, and then I will generate a random number. In this circumstance, I got 18, and according to how I numbered the chips, there's box 18, and that is the box that got selected. So we walk through the other conditions for inference. We are sampling without replacement. We are not putting the chips back. And we start to name the procedure. And sadly, yes, I do have to tell my students who Mr. T is. I pity the fools. Calculate our test statistic. I show them the formula. So what we do, we collect our data. And it is our intention to subtract the individual bag weight from the actual chip weight observations, but we have a problem. I have cheap kitchen scales that don't register a weight for each individual bag. So what we do is we collect all 30 bag of chips weights, and then I have them return their individual chip bags to me. We will weigh the collected 30 bags as one and divide that total weight of the 30 bags by 30 and subtract that division from each of the individual chip weights. And we now are talking about weights of chips and not weight of bag and chips. Calculate our statistic, our p-value, make a conclusion based on comparison of p-value to alpha. The thing is, we tend to find that we have evidence that the chip companies are not lying. So this is where we can perform some follow-up. I like to have them pose with a picture of they're holding their bag. Something to note, if they have a higher per chip weight, they tend to find significant evidence of overfilling the bags. Popcorn's harder for me to work with because of my cheap kitchen scales. And you can walk them through writing a letter of apology or complaint to the chip company and explaining their statistical process. Don't let Hulk smash my chips. I've got something else to show you just before we wrap up. I have two versions of the handout. One is Google Docs or Microsoft Word, whichever one you prefer. So scan it, make it yours, and enjoy.
Hello, this is Amy Crum from Cascade High School in Everett, Washington, and I'm here to tell you about Building Thinking Classrooms, which is a book I read 2 summers ago, and it changed my teaching forever. So I'm here to tell you how and why I made that change. So here's the old me. I used to teach the familiar lecture style or direct instruction, which means the students would do a warm-up at the beginning, and then I would do a lecture and they would take notes, which was kind of a brain dump from me to them. And then they would do guided practice with me helping them and correcting their mistakes. And then they would do homework and then repeat again the next day, repeat again the next day. Very familiar to most of us because this is what, I don't know about you, but I was taught to do this in college education classes. So here's some things to think about with this model. Who does most of the talking and thinking? You probably answered that in your head just now. The answer is the teacher. Are students actually thinking, or are they just copying and or mimicking the teacher? I would argue that they're just copying or mimicking. Can they do problems that are different from those they saw demonstrated? Usually not. Usually they do problems just like what was in the lecture. Are they actively or passively learning? Passively. And the big question is this what we want for them? And I would say maybe not. Maybe that's not what we want for them. So how do we get them to think more? Well, the big thing is to ask students to try things before we teach them how. Ask them to collaborate in groups, discuss and share ideas. Keep the introductions short, only what's needed to get them going. And also another big thing is stop being so helpful. Circulate to give hints, but don't give the answers. Don't do the thinking for them. Instead, teach by asking questions and then help them consolidate and synthesize their learning at the end. And so these images that I'm using here show that, but they come from my geometry text, which is called Illustrative Math, which is based around this idea. But I'm showing you today how I apply it to statistics. So here we go. Other strategies that help encourage thinking. According to the Building Thinking Classrooms book, we are supposed to assign new random groups every day. I didn't do this the first year, and I saw that they were kind of in a rut of assuming that some smart student was going to do the thinking for them. And if they are in random groups every day, then they're more likely to share equally and not assume that somebody's going to do it for them. Make them take turns writing and talking. The writer should be recording other people's ideas, not their own ideas. Make them pass the pen often. Don't let them sit for long. I do not have them working at their desks most days. I have them standing at vertical erasable workspaces, whiteboards in my room, or you could use chalkboards, with their group. The reason why is, first of all, students are trained to be passive learners while they're sitting down. They're trained to be copiers. Standing gets the blood flowing, and it breaks that pattern of sitting and copying. Erasable surfaces encourage risk-taking, makes it easy for them to fix their mistakes. And vertical is easier for a couple of reasons. First of all, I can see their work really easily, and other students can see their work. It makes everything out in the open so that the whole class is sharing knowledge. So my classroom setup, after reading this book, is whiteboards on every wall. I have 10 whiteboard spaces for 10 groups of 3. It cost me about $300 to do this with my own money. Probably I should have applied for a grant, but it was totally worth it. And I could probably do it for less if I needed to. So the decorative colors were totally optional, and I did that because it was fun. Frequently asked questions. Won't this create more work, take more time to plan? Actually, no, I find that it takes less work and time than preparing lectures like I used to do. Question, where do you get the problems or tasks for students to do? I get them straight out of the textbook. This is not requiring a lot of extra work on my part. Most textbook examples are just one step beyond what students already know, and that's perfect for what I need. I take the examples that I would have used in my lectures, I add a few hints, I print them and put them in page protectors on the whiteboards. You could also do the same thing with StatsMedic or Skew the Script worksheets. Just use what you're already using, but give the students a chance to try it without your help, or with a little bit of help. What if they get stuck? They can't figure out how to move on? That's your job. Give them hints if they need it as you circulate, but don't be too helpful. Don't tell them the answers. Teach them by asking questions. How do you randomly assign groups? First of all, I can't believe stats teachers would ask me that question. You shuffle cards and hand them out, or you use a random number generator, or there's many, many other ways to do it. You are stats teachers, and I know you can do that part. That is not going to be a problem for us. Sample of what I do on a typical day. So this is towards the beginning of the sampling distributions chapter. They've just done German tanks. They are asked to take a random sample of 5 pennies. This is an activity taken straight out of the book. So we start with review of stuff they already know and gives them some data to gather to explore. Then I move them on to new concepts. They've not thought about statistics versus parameters very much yet. They haven't thought very much about what a sampling distribution is, and that's the point of this lesson. They've not seen the larger sample size changing the shape and spread of the plots. So they're exploring that in their groups, and then tying into the lesson right before this would be German tanks. So they're talking about unbiased estimators, reviewing that vocabulary, applying it to this new situation. And it's just an activity for them to do with their groups to teach them the ideas without me teaching it to them. I teach it to them by writing good questions. Benefits. Why do I do this? Students think for themselves. They don't rely on me as much. That is a wonderful thing. When we got to the review part of the year in April and I started talking about the investigative task, it was no problem for them. It's just like what we do every day. Every day I ask them to learn some stuff while they're working, and learning while they're doing problems is normal for them. Every conversation with students is a formative assessment. I see and hear every day who understands and who needs more help. I can usually stand in the middle of the room and glance around and see which groups need hints. Subplans are very easy to write with this method, because what I do is I give the sub the same instructions to put on the boards that I would have given, except I give the sub an answer key. The sub takes roll and then says go, and the students do the rest. The sub does not need to know statistics, just uses the key to give hints. My principal thinks I'm wonderful. I have an emphasis on student discussion in my classes that he can see and hear during his observations. I'm never going back to normal teaching, because when I ask students to sit and teach or sit and listen to me, passive learning, they seem half asleep. No matter how interesting my lecture is, they're nodding off. But when I put them at the boards and give them something new to work on, they come alive. The room is full of their voices, not mine, discussing, engaging, thinking, and learning. And it's beautiful to hear. To learn more, read this book. I have not yet implemented all 14 practices that are mentioned in the book. I've only shown you some of them here. Read the book to find out more. Thank you.